What's up, guys? Welcome back again. We are continuing on our series of Birthright faction reviews for Anuire. We have finished up the Southern Coast, and we're basically starting off our next series within the series here, covering the nations of the Western Coast. So we will, in this video, basically just have a quick introduction to some of the major going-ons and what sort of the climate is like, and just a little description of the background and what you can expect if you're on the Western Coast here. And then just as a quick peek at the sort of the map here. So again, the coast there's kind of dominated by the sort of harsh coastal climate there with the body of water there called the Anuire Ruan. That kind of runs all the way down here till we get back to the Straits of Erel, and then we can kind of see that we're getting close to our southern coast nations that we just spent reviewing. So there's not too many different nations here. We got Telenie, Borwin, Tegas, Brosengay, and then that small little one there, Rove, which is actually a very nasty NPC. So, so our little background story here. So the western coast reaches from the waters of the Great Bay called the Tail of Firth down the Straits of Erel and extends east to the Sea Mist Mountains. It looks like a wilder place than most of Anuire. The tops of the pines rise high against the blue of the sky and the backdrop of the mountains. Wooden stockade towns appear here and there on the tree-covered landscapes, their strong walls keeping out the wolves, bears, ogres, trolls, and other creatures from the mountains that still call the land their own. Only the northern marches are more sparsely populated than this region. Perhaps settlers have avoided it because of the fierce storms that lash the coastal provinces. The sea mists protect the rest of Anuire from the worst of the storms, but the western coast has no such shield. The challenges of the coastal climate have made those who live here a hardier breed. Though still civilized, they possess a coarser edge than one might expect from Anuirans. So, settlers have been arriving in record numbers of late, many of them tired of the political hustle and bustle of the eastern kingdoms. Of course, they expect they can bring their cultured ways with them, their desire for the comforts of home within their wild new environment raises the hackles of longtime Western Coast residents. Though tensions seem high now, it's only a matter of time before the newcomers adapt to the frontier life or pack up and go home. So, that being said, more goes on in the politics of the Western Coast than anybody realizes. So, personal grudges and familial feuds dominated smaller kingdoms of the region, and policies decided as much by personal loves and hatreds as by what's best for the domain. One serious contender for the Iron Throne lives in this region, and that is the Archduke Eric Borwin, he intends to keep it that way, working to keep his rivals down while building himself up. So, the goings-on today on the Western Coast, there's a lot of sort of plot points or adventure hooks here, depending on whether you're going to be running an actual country, like a political territory, or just like a guild or church, or like wizard sources, or, if you don't want to go that part, or play that part of the game at all, and just really want to be an adventurer, whether that's a blooded adventurer or a common adventurer, there's a lot of potential and a lot of great gaming to be had here on the Western Coast. So, starting off here, rumors circulate that a forester from the kingdom of Telenie has found a Timavril weapon, which is basically a special type of weapon that is used to kill blooded characters. So that's another interesting part of the game where your rulers of the countries are generally have to have a bloodline, sort of a divine bloodline, to be able to rule a land or other entity. And so there are these special weapons that Timavril basically translate, I think, to as blood silver, if I'm not mistaken. And basically these special weapons can steal a person's bloodline by, you pierce them through the heart. It takes their bloodline, their powers, and basically transfers them to you. So in that sense, it's almost a little bit like Highlander, where you're, instead of chopping heads off here, you're stabbing enemies through the heart to gain their actual divine powers, which is really a neat little concept as well. And certainly puts a little bit of a target on the back of anyone with a bloodline, but certainly rulers with bloodlines as well. So again, rumors that this forester has found this weapon, but now he's disappeared from public view. Scions are converging on Telenie from all over Anuire. Some arrive from as far away as the lands of Vosgard, which is pretty scary as well. If indeed the stories hold truth, and a mere woodcutter wields the weapon, then it's a prize worth taking indeed. Of course, some inevitable doomsayers call the tale a trap for those of the blood, which could also very well be the case. Yet, who could think to eliminate so many scions and regents all at once? Well, in some ways, that could point to Rove Manslayer, the guy that we'll get to that province as well. But he's always looking to rid the land of as many humans as possible, but certainly wouldn't mind getting rid of blooded ones. But it could also be the Gorgon trying and get another scheme. So really an interesting plot point, depending on how you want to go about it. Spies and scouts report that Rove Manslayer, the elf Anshe, has begun preparing a major offensive against the human kingdoms nearby. It seems his kingdom holds more elves than previously thought, and their martial readiness has frightened the regents of the area. And if the scouts saw the elves, there's no doubt that the elves could see the scouts, and that means Rove has plans more devious than simple land grabs. The only problem lies in finding out what those plans are. So, again, Rove just has this small little province there, but there's actually an adventure that takes you there, which we'll cover down the road, I think, called Sword and Crown, which again is really neat. So you actually go and invade his territory as part of that adventure. But again, we'll review that all when in turn, basically. But that could certainly be an interesting plot point, depending on what the DM wants to do. Whether you're caught in that just as a simple adventure or as an actual ruler, that's still going to be pretty frightening there, if that attack came and how. So there's some of these other plot points kind of hint at that in just different ways as far as other things going on. So here, though, explorers continue to discover ancient elven towers in the Elven Woad, some of them with their wealth and treasure still inside. They also contain traps enchanted with magic beyond the comprehension of some of the best mages and thieves in the area. Friendly elves say that the tower's owners left them loaded with wealth and temptations for the greedy humans, a final act of defiance to the encroaching tribes. Further, these elves claim that the items left in the towers are just baubles and junk, yet elves have been seen attempting to breach the defenses of certain towers, so surely they wouldn't be risking their lives for junk or garbage, or so the reasoning goes. So that could be an interesting one there too. Certainly shouldn't take much motivation for your players or potentially rulers to want to acquire some potentially powerful items, but again, you're probably not going to be the only ones after it. So somewhat similar to the woodcutter intro up there as well, with that special weapon. And again, could be one where some of these elves are potentially part of the forces of Rove Manslayer, and they're just trying to build up their power that way. So there's all kinds of neat hooks there. So, moving on, there are, again, quite a few. Oops, there's a little bit more. I forgot. So perhaps the elves' behavior merely adds another layer to their ancestors' subtle ploy to lure humans to their deaths, but the elves might be attempting to recover for themselves the lost wonders of the age before man. So yeah, kind of tying on what we talked about there. Moving on, armies from the domain of Borrowing, again, that's that major power there and one of the contenders for the throne, mass on the border of Tagas to the south, signaling the start of another period of skirmishes between Borrowing and Avenil, Tagas's eastern neighbor and liege. It seems that once again the diplomatic process has broken down and the kingdom of Tagas will suffer for it. The people of Tagas feel truly sick of their role as pawns in the continual maneuverings between the two contenders for the Iron Throne. Harold Corhian, Count of Tagas, has let it be known that the domain seeks aid from someone who can keep the conflict between Borrowing and Avenil on a plane that does not involve armies. So, yeah, and that's one of the unfortunate things with these two smaller nations out here, Tagas and Brosengay. Nominally, they're both allied to Avenil, but because that is really the only easy path between Borrowing, or easier path between Borrowing and Avenil, those countries kind of get caught in the crossfire a lot of the times between these two whenever things kind of break down, as it says, and develop into like outright hostilities, and really neither army is going to cross through again the Manslayer's territory, just because that would anger him and probably cost more lives and forces and resources than with just those two fighting each other like that. So, additionally here, folks whisper that the trolls and giants of the Sea Mist Mountains grow ever more restless in their mountain holdings. Raids and forays into human-held lands increase in frequency, but nearby regions seem too busy with political games to take much notice of a few monsters. They have concerns more immediate than a few mountainside villages Until trolls destroy a larger city, the region simply can't be bothered. So scions unattached to realms might find the mountaineers suitably grateful for assistance in ending the troll raids, however. So whichever of the countries you want to play that lead into, that would work wonders there and could be really interesting. So all the way up through the Stone Crown Mountains. So honestly, so from anywhere down here, so you could run this or continue this idea throughout Brosengay, Tagus, obviously not really probably in Rove's territory, but up into then the rest of the Sea Mist Mountains and everything there. So that could be really interesting too. And again, there's many adventure hooks that you could run into with that as well. So from just some simple hunting down some monsters into maybe some more nefarious plots. And related to that also, Orog and Goblin attacks from the Sea Mist Mountains have become much more frequent. Lately, folks murmur that the creatures have finally managed to break through the ancient dwarven defenses that had kept them locked underground. Some say that Rove's elves had a role in the breakdown of the dwarven barricades, which means the abomination has insidious plans for the provinces of the western coast, plans that just now are beginning to reach fruition. So yeah, in many ways between these last two, stuff is kind of about to hit the fan there. They could certainly be unrelated, but if you wanted to work that into as a DM, as a part of a larger ongoing campaign, and sort of misleading the players a little bit, thinking, oh, these are just typical monster attacks, but they're maybe just getting more bold. But really, the sort of the puppet master behind everything is the Manslayer himself, and what you might need to do to ultimately try and combat that. So that could be a relatively short campaign, or a really long one that takes the players up into the higher levels of play to potentially take down the elf once and for all. And of course, that would get you innumerable riches and everlasting fame, but also probably the single largest target on your back of all the elves out there. But that could be really interesting too, again. And it could take you in many different places there. And really, depending on how successful you are in repelling and dealing with these attacks and finding out maybe the bigger reasons behind it, you could then certainly command various rewards as part of that, whether that could even be like territory or other riches or influence. There's really no limit there. So both of those could be really interesting as well. So that, again, is just a brief intro into the Western Coast nations. We'll be starting our series of reviews here, so look forward to those guys. Leave some comments if you have played on the Western Coast here, whether it's, again, ruling a territory or other type of domain, or just done some adventuring here. Let us know what your experiences have been, and any suggestions you've done for improving the way the game's set up in this area. Be happy to hear from you guys. So thanks so much again for stopping by. Like and subscribe if you haven't already, and take care. We'll see you in the next one.